Hi, my name is Ethan Ray, and I'm a senior research analyst at 451 Research, part of S&P Global. Joining me today is Heidi Farris, the CEO of ActivTrak, and Scott Friesen, EVP of Strategic Analytics at Echo Global Logistics. Scott, Heidi, thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about workforce analytics. Workforce analytics empowers organizations to optimize productivity, enhance employee experience, and build operational resilience. As the old adage goes, you can't manage what you don't measure. And by transforming workforce data into actionable insights, workforce analytics enables transparency, informed decision making, and strategic alignment, laying the foundation for innovation and adaptability in an increasingly AI driven business landscape. Heidi, what's the definition of workforce analytics and why are they important?
Workforce analytics has really become a strategic necessity across organizations. Leaders are being asked to do more with less, manage hybrid work teams, and most recently, make sure that AI investments will actually pay off. Right. And so without workforce analytics, decisions are based on assumptions instead of fact. And leaders are essentially flying blind, right? They don't truly understand how work is happening across the organization. The gap is especially costly with AI because companies are spending heavily in this area, but most don't have a baseline to understand how work is happening today to see how that work is going to change in the future and be able to justify those investments going forward. They need to be able to answer questions like where's time going, what's driving results, and where should we invest to improve outcomes. And without that type of data, it's very hard to continue spending money, especially if you're not seeing the impact. There's lots of studies out there today that say AI is having no impact at all and they're spending tons of money. But the reality is, you don't really know if it's having a positive impact or not unless you really can see how work is happening and how it's changing as you implement and adopt AI.
Scott, from your viewpoint, what are the key attributes or benefits of workforce analytics?
A lot of companies are measuring the tasks that folks are completing, but as Heidi mentioned, not understanding time is a huge missing component. And so the key attribute to me is really about understanding how people are spending their time at a granular level, understanding how they may be switch tasking between different systems and activities that they're doing. And the benefits are, well, there's a bunch of benefits. One of which Heidi mentioned, which is targeting your actual efforts for efficiency. So, for example, we found that in our operations group, 45% of their time was being spent in email. And while we knew they were spending a lot of time in email, we didn't appreciate just how much. And so that's actually informed investment decisions that we've made in AI and other sort of efficiency tooling in the email space. But in addition to that, once you actually open up some of that time, how do you reallocate the work across the teams? This is another huge element of benefit. And frankly, I think it's one of the areas where folks that aren't getting ROI out of their AI initiatives are probably missing. If you add just a little bit of efficiency to hundreds or thousands of employees, the total amount of time in theory is many, many hours. But if you don't reallocate how the work happens across the teams, you don't ever capture it. So one of the things we've done, for example, is build a sort of attrition tool that basically, if we lose someone from an operations group, we're actually using the ActivTrak data to inform how the remaining work should get reallocated amongst the team so that we don't end up backfilling that role. So those are some of the benefits that we're getting from understanding at a more granular level how people are spending their time.
Heidi, what is unique about ActiveTrak's technical approach to workforce analytics to, ascertain some of these variables that Scott's talking about?
ActiveTrack is built on three core principles: accuracy, performance, and privacy by design. The first, accuracy, is we capture granular activity level data, not surveys or proxies. So decisions based on the data reflect reality about how work is actually happening across an organization. And our lightweight agent runs in the background with zero employee input and no impact to performance, which drives adoption and eliminates busy work like filling out timesheets or keeping track of how much time you spend on projects or things like that. And last, and probably what we are most known for, is our privacy by design, right? Privacy is foundational to everything we do. We don't do keystroke logging. We don't do, webcam recording or super invasive type monitoring. Customers can configure privacy controls to match their cultural and compliance needs, that protects employee privacy, but also allows them to meet the regulations such as GDPR, CCPA, and of course, pending AI regulations that are likely to come soon.
That's going to be a changing landscape, and starting with that privacy first design puts you, at a strategic advantage to support those implementations. And speaking of implementations, Scott, how do you see this play out in a business context at Echo Global Logistics?
Well, first, I want to acknowledge what Heidi said about the right balance of measurement with enough precision to see how people are actually spending their time without going overboard from a privacy standpoint. We've actually had a very good experience, but I do want to say we've been careful and thoughtful about our communication with our staff. And so we've managed to roll out our ActivTrak implementation without major cultural issues, but it is something that needs to be carefully considered. In terms of the actual business impact, there's basically two major components. One is our ability to see how our employees are actually spending their time. And Heidi mentioned, surveys and things like that. In the past, without a tool like this, you're relying on a lot of self-reported feedback, and there are a lot of measurement inaccuracies with those sorts of things, not only based on recall, but based on the level of detail and granularity. We can target our efficiency efforts in the places where folks are spending the most time. As a specific example of that, we build a lot of our own technology and tooling, and we discovered through our first implementation of ActivTrak that our staff was spending far more time in email than we even realized. We knew they were spending a lot of time in email, but it turns out that our operations teams were spending 45% of their time in email. That actually shifted some of our efforts, our technology efforts, and even now some of our AI efforts to provide efficiencies specific to the email space. Once you actually implement technology or AI or any kind of process improvement, how do you actually know whether or not it made a difference? You have to be able to understand how tasks are taking time. And the only way you can do that is to sort of measure the time and measure the tasks and ultimately come up with some version of time per task. And as you get into sort of a continuous improvement mindset, as you bring in AI tools or other technologies, those are the KPIs that you need to keep an eye on and make sure that you're actually moving the needle for your business.
It's fascinating what you can uncover when you have that visibility of your workforce, and tying it to context, which brings us to our next question. Heidi, why is business context and integration critical?
You have to have both the what's happening and how long is it taking, right? And so data without context is just noise, right? So to Scott's point, their team was spending 45% of their time in email. That may be good or bad, but you don't know unless you understand the role and what they should be doing, right? That would be perfectly normal for a CSM as an example. But if an engineer is spending 45% of their time in email, you've probably got a problem on your hands, right? And so it's that context that really turns the data into insight. And those integrations matter to bring that context to the data, right? So those insights need to show up where the work and the decisions are actually made, whether that's in HR systems or project management systems or BI platforms or wherever it is. And the real value comes when insights are embedded into everyday workflows so that you're not just going to another dashboard to figure out like, okay, let me stitch all this together and figure out what was actually happening. The context in the flow of work is where you really want that to happen.
Scott, it sounds like Echo Global Logistics is fairly mature in your analytical approach, but ActiveTrack can support customers across different analytic maturities. Can you speak a little bit to that?
As you point out, Ethan, we've got, in-house data science, analytics, and some very strong capabilities where one of the things that I like about the ActiveTrak offering is that we can get a hold of very granular level data and work with the data at the sort of most fundamental level. However, if you have a firm that doesn't have those sort of types of capabilities, there's a lot of great insights that are offered sort of out of the box from ActivTrak's dashboarding. So you can sort of think about it as, version one is you literally just use the tooling that ActivTrak provides straight out of the box. There's a lot of great insights, a lot of great reporting. The next thing would be that you might actually be moving the data into a different environment through sort of a direct digital connection, and then laying your own reporting on that. And then an even more advanced version is you're actually doing modeling or other sort of deep analysis on the raw data and combining it with other enterprise data. And so there's sort of anywhere you are along that spectrum, there's sort of benefit to be gained from actually being able to see what's going on with the staff.
Heidi, I think this brings us to kind of the one of the cruxes of the conversation, which is the role of workforce analytics in supporting AI adoption. Can you just talk about how that plays out?
Workforce analytics is essential infrastructure for AI success. First, it provides a baseline, right? You can't prove ROI without understanding current work patterns or where you're starting from. And second, it guides prioritization, right? Workforce analytics shows where AI can have the biggest impact through identifying repetitive work, friction heavy processes, or capacity constraints. And third, it measures the outcomes, right? Are tools actually being adopted? Is time shifting to higher value work? Are you regaining utilization on certain teams that are adopting AI heavily, right? So how does other work shift, right? When you start to use more AI, and that's really where the value comes, because the whole goal of AI is to create more capacity across teams, right? And whether that means you use that capacity to reinvest in the organization or you use that capacity to save money for the bottom line, either way, that's the big question. That's how we're trying to approach the market. AI without workforce analytics is just hope, and AI with workforce analytics is a real strategy.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time to apply workforce analytics to a number of different problems, AI being one of them. So thank you so much for your contributions to this conversation and shedding a little bit more light on ActivTrak and how it's being deployed at Echo Global Logistics. And thank you for your time today, Scott and Heidi.